Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir Podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, LiveDebugger version 0.3.0 was released. So we talked about it previously that it was coming, and now it has been released, and it looks great.
Yeah.
If you aren't familiar, LiveDebugger is a browser-based tool for debugging applications written in LiveView. And it's an awesome tool. So you have to check it out if you haven't used it already. So we've got a link to the announcement post, which includes a short 1-minute video that demonstrates some of these new features. And just to highlight what some of them are, this new release has a Firefox extension. It also has a new view with global callback traces and measuring callback execution times. So it'll show you how much time, the update step is actually taking, things like that. I think the best one is the proper way of debugging redirects. So it's both redirects, but also if the LiveView that you're debugging crashes, then you don't lose this state, right? So you have that last known state of what the LiveView was, which is super helpful if you're trying to figure out why did this crash. So LiveDebugger version 0.3, if you haven't tried it, you should go do that. And congrats to the team over at Software Mansion for doing that and working on that.
It makes me wonder, when Phoenix LiveView crashes, like in production, that process dies, right? And the only state that kind of comes back is just whatever's in the form on the browser side gets resent when it reloads. I wonder if there's some techniques here that LiveDebugger does, like on the server side, that keeps that state on the process. Is there something here? It's probably a bad idea. But
probably
I wonder if
because it was in a bad state at the time it crashed.
Yeah. All right. Well, scratch that thought. All right. Next up, Oban 1.6 is out. We got some posts to the announcement and to the changelog that goes into each item with a lot more information, but I'll highlight some of the big items here. So 1.6 includes, and this is Oban Pro for what it's worth. This has Pro specific features in here that are really interesting and really helpful. So some of those features are sub workflows, right? So workflows is a thing in Oban Pro where you can kind of chain a lot of things together. They have dependencies. You essentially build a graph of jobs and you have them wait on another, so forth, right? And so the big new feature, one of the big new features in 1.6 is the ability to add sub workflows, right? So the idea here is you can kind of graph out what this workflow could look like and then what this sub workflow could look like. And then you can kind of mash that graph together into the same workflow, which is pretty nice. So you can say that, that workflow is dependent on a setup step that happens before. It doesn't eagerly run both of those workflows. It makes it act like a regular step in the job, right? Just kind of branches out to its own things. Also related is cascading workflows. That's probably the big feature of 1.6. So what are cascading workflows? All right, it's still an Oban Pro workflow, but here's some things that this helps fix. So you can put in context now into workflows. So for example, you would do workflow.new, pipe that into workflow.put context, and then in your context, you put some variables, right? User ID 123, something like that. And then in all of the jobs below, and by jobs, I mean the steps in the workflow, you can then pipe that into workflow.add cascade. You still name your steps. It feels a little bit like Ecto Multi, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then that context gets passed into and can accumulate as that workflow goes, proceeds, right? So you start with just a user ID and then you fetch it. And so now you've got the whole user in the, in the context, for example, and then you can process, that user, mutate it, whatever. And then you end up notifying the user. And each of those workflow steps would have dependencies on before, so they don't execute too quickly. That's pretty interesting, right? Also still kind of illustrating the graph capabilities of Oban workflows generally. All right, next up is grafting sub workflows. So the idea here is you may not know the jobs that need to happen at coding time. It kind of depends on what one of those steps ends up accumulating or one of the results, right? And so if that result says, there were 200, users in this workflow, I need 200 of these sub workflows to happen then. You can graft those in runtime. So you can think of it as like I don't know the size of this branch here, but I'm just going to go ahead and tape that branch right here, let that grow as much as it needs to. All right, and in all of that, we kind of illustrated workflow context, so that's in there. Not about workflows anymore, but some other good things in here is they overhauled partitioning, which was needed. So one of the specs here is that they benchmarked 10,000 jobs spread across 20 partitions, 200,000 jobs. There it is. Yeah. And processing took 17 seconds in 1.6 versus 360 seconds in 1.5. So big performance increase there. That's 20x faster for those counting. So that's nice. Hey, free performance, right? Two more. There's now a global burst mode. I think I can only think of LLMs now. They've invaded my mind. But anyway, let's just say that you have a lot of jobs waiting to get processed. It's kind of overwhelming the queue. So you can add this or enable this burst mode, which will allow you to maximize the throughput by temporarily exceeding the per partition global limits. And so it kind of just lets you burst through it, I guess, right? All right, and last one is preserving the queue, updates. So dynamic queues. Dynamic queues preserve queue changes made at runtime across applications restarts. This is a pretty advanced one, I think, right? It's like normally I think folks would just be fine with like a typical, I don't know, like I have these 10 queues, they're in these priorities, and that's kind of it. But in runtime, you might like add a dynamic one. It might be temporary, right? And so if the application restarts, it would have to like dynamically, create that on the restarted app. Dynamic queues is solving that problem now, right? Mm-hmm. So it's preserving those updates across reboots, which is nice, which means there must be some sort of state there. That's high points of Oban 1.6. Again, we got links to the full changelog to learn more about all the details of those updates. Oban Pro is definitely worth it. Go give it a shot.
Let me tell you a quick story about our partner, honeybadger.io. One time, a customer of theirs had a background job run overnight that caused hundreds of thousands of errors to be reported to Honeybadger by mistake. Like many other error tracking and performance monitoring tools, Honeybadger bills for monthly usage. So this customer's mistake was going to cost them a lot of extra money that month. If you've ever used a monitoring service, you might have experienced something like this. Well, fortunately for this customer, they emailed Honeybadger's support and received the most amazing reply. Honeybadger was resetting their monthly quota and canceling the bill. This is just one example of how much the small team at Honeybadger cares about their users. Ask anyone you know and you'll hear similar stories. Remember, Honeybadger now has APM, or Application Performance Monitoring, with support for Elixir traces out of the box. They also include default dashboards for major Elixir components, such as Ecto, Plug, Phoenix, LiveView, Oban, Absinthe, and Finch, which is part of Rec. So go check them out at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started, and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Don't forget to bookmark it. That's honeybadger.io. And next up, YOLO version 0.2.0 was released. It's a major release, and despite the low numbering. So if you're like, YOLO, you only live once, what is this? Alvis Susmel, he found time between taking care of his newborn to get some coding done on the YOLO project, which is an image detection library. And so really what YOLO stands for is you only look once. And it's a cutting-edge real-time object detection system. So it works by predicting boundary boxes and class probabilities directly from an input image in a single evaluation. So it only has to look at it once, which means it can be very fast, and you can even do it on individual frames of video, things like that. The big update here was to go to version 2. We've got links to, he has a blog post we have a link to the GitHub, which includes the release notes for this. But version 0.2 brings YOLOX support. It's a super fast model and it also works under a much more permissive Apache 2 license, which resolves some of the previous licensing issues that there were before. If you're interested in doing anything with image classification and want to do it with Elixir, definitely want to check this one out. I've got ideas for it, but it's like, oh, there's just too many things to play with, and I can't get to them all.
They have an image on their GitHub. So it's pretty nice. Yeah, they've got like little boxes for the typical image recognition, stuff.
Yep.
But boxes all around, things in the image, and just their confidence level of, like this is a 42% chance. This is a person. This is very obviously a person. 42% chance. And then traffic lights, cars. The imagery is just like of a road of people going through it. But yeah, pretty nice. They use eVision underneath the covers, which has been around a little bit, which I think is more like the bindings to like the underlying C libraries that are doing the heavy lifting there. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And if you check out the blog post, he has a embedded YouTube video where he's talking about how some of this works and showing it off. It helps get a better understanding of it. And he's also talking about how to fine tune for your types of images, doing your own image classification. And I think there's even like some pictures of recognizing different components on like PCB boards, like circuit boards. You could really get special with this. It's not like, oh, is that a cat? No, it's like you can get into much more interesting things that are more geared to your domain.
All right, moving on. Herman Valesco has a good post about why we test and on the importance of testing. So we got a link to the blog post as well. Here's some quotes to it. There are many benefits to testing, but they're also costly. So why should they exist? And we write automated tests to continuously verify the behavior of our application as early as possible. Herman is he is a verified tester. I can verify that, right? he definitely believes in the good testing culture. Me and him worked at Thoughtbot a long time ago. That's Thoughtbot was a very big proponent of the TDD workflow. A bit less than the extreme programming philosophy, but still in a particular process of how to write code. And they typically start with, tests. It's a hard habit to get into, right? Like you get excited about the feature, you get excited about the bug or something, you just go straight into it and you start start slapping some code in there and like rerunning it, right? And you get into this cycle of like, okay, now how do I verify that it's actually fixed? Your first instinct might be, well, I'm going to start up my local server, I'm going to navigate to that thing, and I'm going to see if that bug is still there. And if that's the flow, I don't know about you, but I've learned that ends up being way slower, especially in scenarios where there's just like complicated fixture setup. There has to be this whole state of the world for that. That still could happen, right? But to get to that like weird state, right? But it is usually much slower for me to like basically click test and verify and then write some as small as possible unit test to assert that it's fixed and that it doesn't regress. That's what the test ends up being. It's more about, okay, yes, I've definitely fixed this and we don't want to regress it in the future.
And Herman's post talking about, testing takes time, but it's valuable. I totally agree with that. But I think AI and LLMs are changing the cost of testing. This is all, caveats, right? That you have it properly set up. You've tuned your work environment. When I already have tests in the project that are set up the way I want them to, and I use cursor rules to say, this is how tests should be. The fixtures are over here in this file. Don't just make up stuff. And you're telling it how to do testing. Once that's all set up, then I can just say, hey, I need some test coverage on this function, and I specifically want to test this scenario. It can just go and it creates good tests. If you don't have all that stuff set up, then it's going to create crap tests. It's going to bring in mocking libraries that you don't use. It's going to create its own fixtures. It's going to, do all this crap. But it's like, no, if you have it all set up, then it's like, it saves you so much time and I get the test coverage that I want. And the whole point of that is so that I can have confidence in my application. And when there is a problem later, I'm refactoring in 6 months from now and something breaks, I quickly narrow in on where the breakage is now. So yeah, I think with a properly tuned setup, LLMs are changing the cost calculation of how much testing actually costs. At least it is for me. I don't know.
Yeah. LLMs in the testing world, I think they're going to collide, right? LLMs can help run, They can help write a lot of tests. They could also kind of like run tests too.
Oh, yes. And that's the best scenario, right? Is when I have the test coverage that I want. Yes, this is what it's supposed to do. And I can just review the tests, because that's so much cheaper in terms of time and effort for me to just review the test. Is this testing what I want? And if it is, then you just have the AI or the LLM, just run and work on the code, either debugging it or fixing it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's iterating on running the tests. And then going back
when
and
I'm
forth.
saying running the tests, so I hear what you're saying. It's actually running like mixed tests, yada yada.
Yeah.
But,
and looking at the output, and
what I was meaning though was it can you can just tell it like, hey, verify that verify that this feature actually works against my running, localhost server or something.
Yeah.
And given the right tools there, like if you have it connected to some MCP server that can drive a browser, it can actually open up that browser, navigate to as good of your instructions can be to get to the thing.
Yeah.
And then verify that it's good. And in the meantime, if you set it up right, I might be nerd sniping somebody. If you set it up right, it could actually be driving and recording the browser actions at that point to write like a integration test at that point, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And then just outside of LLMs entirely, you still have those other synthetic ones that like just like for example, a Datadog, you can set up synthetic tests to say, go browse my production site, run this like sequence of events once a day to make sure that nothing got out there, and run that across the world. So we're also kind of asserting that we don't have weird firewall rules on some random load balancer. It was full integration testing there. Anyway, testing and LLMs are definitely going to be partners in the future.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I like that. And next up, I saw a helpful tip from Philip Brown that I just wanted to pass along. It answers the question of, have you ever wanted to generate a unique URL? Maybe the user has to interact to click something, right? And now you want to generate a unique URL in a LiveView and have it open in a new tab. You're not redirecting within the same tab. You want to open a new tab. Well, it's a super simple thing to do. And he just includes a simple JS event handler and a one line, fire this event from the LiveView. And it's all just in a simple little image. But you got to link to that because it's like, yes, this is great. It's a handy little thing to just see, oh yeah, that's all I have to do. Oh yeah. It's just that easy.
It's funny how these things can just be so simple. I'm still looking forward to those co-located hooks, by the way, because that's that's just a hook there basically, right? Yeah,
what he's basically done is just added a window add event listener to listening to a specific event. And in this case, it'd be like calling it Phoenix :new-tab. And then the details that you're passing into the event is the URL you want to go to. And that just does a window open, the URL you give it, and the underscore blank, and focus the new window, right? So a simple, almost like a one-liner. And then from the Elixir side, you're just saying push this event, the new tab, and here's the URL to open. It's like a hook, but it's just in the app.js root is all it would need to be. You're not actually creating a dedicated hook for it.
All right, last up, the combined effort for creating a new Elixir LSP meaning language server, that plugs into IDEs to give intelligent and helpful code, completion, documentation lookups. That's like 90% of what I use there is documentation lookups. But all the other cool things that it does as well, has seen some recent progress. Let's dive into that. What is recent progress? Don't get too excited. They have a blue sky handle now. Yay! That's it. That's all they got. Nothing else at the moment. It's just a tiny little teaser of a post with a little smirk of like hey, what could be coming soon? We don't know yet. I've got no inside info, but it just looks like, hey, maybe they're gearing up for something. They've got their own site. I think we talked about that several months ago at this point.
It's been some time.
expert-lsp.org. Still nothing there at the time of recording, so don't go look at it. There's nothing there. But now they have a blue sky handle, which is encouraging, right? That might mean that, hey, something's around the corner. We don't know when or what, I was hoping that launching a website, even if it's just a placeholder, would have meant something. That it's coming soon, but not yet. We're still looking forward to it. LSPs are pretty much a critical developer experience, to folks like adopting a language. Like if they don't have a good LSP, man, not going to happen.
Might as well just open a text editor.
Yeah, really, it's just like Notepad. So thankfully, the Elixir community has 3 good options here for LSPs, right? We've got NextLS, we've got Lexical. That's the one that I'm personally using, and there's also Elixir LS, the OG one. It probably the most feature complete too, as far as like all the nooks and crannies of what the LSP protocol offers. Elixir LS is most likely to have the one that's have that feature. NextLS and Lexical having their flavor on things for stability, but then also being disconnected from like your actual runtime. I don't know if you've experienced this. Like I experienced this with like Tidewave. For what it's worth, like if your LLM agent has like vibe coded some junk in there to make it crash, your MCP server stops working too, right? And so the same thing with Elixir LSP. Sometimes if you've got something that is like critically broken in your in progress code, your LSP may not work. It's kind of a problem. Anyway, so not to go into all the problems of all these things, but it's a hard problem is my point in talking about all this. And so, if you haven't heard of Expert is the name of the combined LSP of the creators from Lexical and NextLS and Elixir LS. So we're really looking forward to what that grand vision and grand implementation is going to look like. So I'm very excited about it.
Yep. Yeah, I personally favor the Elixir LS, but it does have some stability issues. So I am really looking forward to this project. And when I saw that there was a blue sky little account for it, yeah, that doesn't really mean anything. No, they didn't say anything, but it's like, ooh, they're gearing up. Maybe they'll be saying something soon. At least that was my hope. So we'll let you know as soon as we hear anything more definitive.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.